Have you ever wondered why the person who swept you off your feet can leave you feeling lost, drained, and questioning your worth? Have you felt the crushing weight of praise that inexplicably turns into cold criticism, the sweet words that suddenly suffocate? In this video, we'll peel back the narcissist's mask of illusion and reveal the one force he can never control, the virtuous woman within you. By the end, you'll know exactly how to recognize his tactics, reclaim your power, and break free from emotional manipulation once and for all. Stay with us until the end, because you'll discover the hidden red flags, learn the subtle signs that expose a narcissist's game before it's too late. Carl Jung's secret archetype, uncover the psychological blueprint of the virtuous woman and why it dismantles manipulation. Step-by-step path. Follow a clear roadmap from setting your first boundary to igniting your inner strength that transforms pain into peace. Real life transformations. Hear stories of women just like you who found liberation and rebuilt their lives. Your awakening. Find the single question you must ask yourself today to spark a complete rebirth. Don't miss a single moment. Your journey from doubt to unwavering self-love starts now. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. The narcissist's mask and the danger of illusion. He doesn't seem like a villain. He doesn't present himself as dangerous. Quite the opposite when he first appears. My heart both races and trembles with excitement, convinced I've found something extraordinary. The narcissist is a master of illusion, an expert in emotional seduction. He knows exactly what you need to hear. He reads your vulnerabilities as if he had a map of your soul, each hidden fear, each secret yearning laid bare before him. He molds himself into everything you've dreamed of, and that's why you give in. You believe. You trust. At first, everything is perfect. He's attentive, attractive, and available in a way that feels almost magical. He makes you laugh at things you haven't laughed at in years, compliments the little details you always thought no one noticed, and puts you on a pedestal. It's intoxicating, and without realizing it, you start forgetting yourself, reshaping your whole being just to fit into the dream he meticulously designed. The relationship becomes a mirror where you no longer see yourself, only the reflection of what he wants you to be. It's devastating to feel your true self slipping away. But then, without warning, everything changes. Compliments twist into subtle criticisms. Affection vanishes, replaced by icy distance. His attention morphs into relentless demands. And when you try to make sense of it, he gaslights you, calling you too sensitive, accusing you of overreacting, insisting that you're always the one creating problems. I've felt the confusion swirl around me like a storm. He sows doubt like a poisoner planting seeds, and soon you question reality itself. This cycle of narcissistic abuse is soul-crushing. First, he exalts you, then isolates you, and finally begins to deconstruct every piece of who you are. The cruelest part, he does all of this with a smile on his face. To the world, he's a charming partner, the very embodiment of confidence. But, the truth, no one else sees the subtle terror, the sense of tiptoeing through landmines, the fear that even breathing wrong will unleash his fury. The narcissist doesn't need to shout to destroy you. He wields sweet words, laced with malice. He disappears into calculated silence, punishes with emotional absence, and hides contempt behind, "I'm just tired." And you, heart-pounding, find yourself scrambling to please, to change, to rewind time, and recapture the enchantment of those first days. But that beginning? It was nothing but a trap, a scripted performance designed to ensnare your soul. How many women live trapped in this emotional labyrinth without even noticing? How many endure daily erosion of their spirit, mistaking it for relationship issues? The narcissist doesn't love, he uses. He thrives when you feel small. And when you finally glimpse the reality, he makes you doubt your sanity. Have you ever wondered, am I losing my mind? Have you ever wept in secret so no one could witness how broken you felt? Have you ever stayed in a relationship you knew was destroying you because you were terrified to walk away? These are the unmistakable signs you're caught in the illusion of a narcissistic relationship. The most dangerous thing about a narcissist isn't what he does, it's how he makes you betray yourself. He pulls you away from your intuition, your strength, your identity, and before you know it, you're begging for validation from someone who will never truly see you. But take heart, there is hope. There exists a woman he cannot deceive, a woman who sees right through the glossy mask and refuses to be swayed by empty flattery. This woman is his downfall, and she is the virtuous woman. She doesn't play his games because she's already mastered them from the inside. She was once shattered, each piece a memory of pain, but she rebuilt herself with unshakable faith and fierce courage. She refuses to give in, to beg, or to accept anything less than she deserves. When the narcissist attempts to dominate her, he discovers something he never anticipated. True power doesn't lie in controlling another. It lives in the freedom of someone who no longer fears loss. And as you listen to these words, I hope you feel a spark of recognition. That virtuous woman already exists within you, waiting to shatter every illusion and reclaim her life, ready to rise, unstoppable. Who is the virtuous woman, according to Carl Jung? When Carl Jung delved into the rich tapestry of feminine archetypes, he wasn't talking about mere surface behaviors or social roles. I believe he was pointing to something far more profound, a soul, deep force that lives in every woman when she finally makes peace with her authentic self. It's as if he whispered to us that, beneath the expectations and the labels, there exists a fierce, tender power, the power of the virtuous woman. To me, the virtuous woman is not defined by perfection or by dutiful service to others. She refuses to be boxed in by outdated standards or to mute her voice for approval. Instead, she radiates an inner awareness that feels almost electric. She is awake to her value, fully present with her shadows, and unafraid to fold her darkest experiences into the mosaic of her wisdom. In my own life, I've witnessed how transformational this can be. It's like watching a phoenix rise from its ashes, wings unfurled in glowing defiance. There's an almost miraculous alchemy at work when she faces pain. Where many of us once carried our scars as burdens, dull reminders of betrayal, loss, or heartbreak, she carefully repurposes them into armor. I find this to be one of the most emotionally stirring ideas Jung ever offered, that suffering need not be a life sentence, but can become a shield. In her, struggle becomes strength, and wounding becomes a gateway to deeper compassion. Perhaps the most awe-inspiring quality of the virtuous woman is how she dismantles a narcissist's kingdom without raising her voice. I've often said that true strength isn't loud. It's the steady pulse of serenity in the storm. She doesn't fall into the trap of fiery arguments or desperate pleas. Instead, she maintains an unshakable peace, even when the world around her threatens chaos. I've felt this peace myself, when I've chosen to step away from a toxic conversation rather than be drawn into it. In that silence, there's more power than any shouted retort could ever muster. What terrifies a narcissist most is control, and here, the virtuous woman breaks the spell. She listens to that subtle inner compass, that gut-knowing whisper that tells her something's amiss before her mind even processes it. When false promises flutter at her like poisoned birds, she isn't enchanted by their song. Instead, she calmly closes the door, preserving her heart and her self-respect. I can't emphasize enough how liberating it is to trust that inner voice. Once you do, you begin to see manipulations as transparent veils you can simply set aside. She moves through life, not as a pawn seeking approval, but as the sovereign of her destiny. I feel an almost reverent admiration for her confidence. It's not arrogance, but a grounded certainty that she belongs in her world. She places herself at the center of her story, not out of selfishness, but out of necessity, because her dreams, her boundaries, and her joy matter. And in this, she offers a radical message that the most profound love we can know begins with choosing ourselves. Jung beautifully described how a self-aware woman becomes a mirror, reflecting the hidden truths in others. To a narcissist, this is deeply unsettling. In her presence, he cannot maintain his masks or his grand illusions. She sees past his charm into the hollow core of insecurity and pain. But she doesn't judge, she simply won't participate in his drama. She quietly withdraws, safeguarding her peace as if it were the rarest treasure. And this, I've come to understand, is neither weakness nor retreat. It is sublime wisdom. Maybe you don't yet recognize this woman within yourself. Perhaps you feel distant from her brilliance, as if she's someone else entirely. But let me share my conviction. She's already there, tucked inside your own heart. All it takes is a moment of radical self-honesty, a willingness to embrace every part of yourself. And suddenly, that virtuous woman steps forward. When she does, no narcissist can break her, because once you know your light, the darkness loses its power over you. How she brings his world crashing down. I've always found it profoundly moving and oddly liberating to watch a truly virtuous woman dismantle a narcissist's empire of manipulation, not with bluster or rage, but with the quiet power of her soul. In my view, there is something almost sacred about the way she wields her integrity like a shield, refusing to stoop to his games. He, the expert in emotional warfare, accustomed to exploiting every crack in a person's defense, suddenly finds himself utterly disarmed. And that, to me, is the most beautiful form of justice. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. She doesn't resort to shouting or vindictive attacks. Instead, she stands firm in her self-worth, radiating a serene confidence that feels almost like a warm sunrise after a long, cruel night. When he hurls insults or attempts to provoke a reaction, she doesn't flinch. He expects to see her tears, her anger, her desperate pleas, but instead, he is met with a calm so deep it stuns him into silence. I can't help but admire the emotional courage it takes to remain composed in the face of his cruelty. It's a form of strength that often goes unrecognized. He tries every trick in his playbook: gaslighting, guilt trips, emotional withdrawal, but she meets each tactic not with defensiveness, but with unwavering peace. To him, this lack of fear is maddening. He can't understand how someone could refuse to be rattled by his storms. He's so used to being the puppet master that the idea of losing control over her heart is almost inconceivable. In my experience, nothing frustrates a narcissist more than encountering someone whose value doesn't hinge on his validation. In the end, she doesn't wage a dramatic last stand or pen scathing letters. She simply walks away. And in that departure lies the real devastation. Watching her step back, not out of anger, but out of profound wisdom, feels like witnessing a phoenix ascend from ashes. She removes herself from his messages, deactivates the channels through which he once ensnared her attention, and fades gracefully from the spaces he once dominated. This vanishing act isn't about punishing him, it's about reclaiming her own life and rebuilding the pieces he tried so hard to fracture. And when she's gone, the narcissist is left to confront an emptiness he never thought possible, the hollow ache of losing control over a heart he once thought indestructible. I find it heartbreaking, yet deeply satisfying, to imagine him staring into that void, finally forced to reckon with the truth he had always evaded. A woman who values herself above all, who refuses to be a mere reflection of his ego, and who shines brighter in her freedom than he ever could in his deceit. In my opinion, her greatest weapon wasn't vengeance. It was self-liberation, the triumphant power of choosing oneself, the path to becoming a virtuous woman. I've come to believe that a truly virtuous woman is not born fully formed, but painstakingly sculpted by every fragment of her past pain. Each sting of rejection, each echoing moment of abandonment, Every tear she hid behind a forced smile. These were not mere setbacks, but the raw materials of her becoming. I've watched too many women whisper apologies for mistakes that weren't theirs, shrink themselves into silence just to keep fragile connections alive. It breaks my heart to think of how many times she lived on autopilot, her lips curved in a polite grin, while her spirit quietly cracked under the weight of unspoken sorrow. Then, one day, something shifts. The ache grows too loud to ignore, the void inside too vast to pretend isn't there. In that shattering instant, almost without warning or fanfare, she dares to look inward. I still feel a rush of awe, remembering the first time I saw such a moment of reckoning in someone I cared about. That raw, trembling honesty when she faced the truth she'd spent years evading. In that moment, she realized she wasn't meant merely to survive, but to thrive, to live with joy, to love with abandon, to laugh with abandon. That first spark of self-awareness is the turning point in her journey. She begins to treat herself as her own most trusted confidant, asking the questions no one else could answer. What do I truly need? What boundaries safeguard my peace? What unhealed wounds am I still carrying? In my experience, this level of self-inquiry takes a kind of bravery few ever muster. Yet she discovers, to her astonishment, that tending to her own heart is not selfish. It's the vital act of honoring her worth. She allows herself to cry without shame, seeing tears not as a sign of weakness, but as badges of profound courage. With each tear shed and each painful insight claimed, she builds a foundation of self-respect. I've admired how she practices saying no not with anger, but with quiet conviction, cutting ties that once seemed impossible to sever simply because they no longer cherish her tranquility. In the hush of solitude, when the pressure of others' expectations fades away, she rediscovers her voice. She learns to pray not for approval, but for wisdom to navigate her path, for resilience when storm clouds gather, for clarity to discern her next steps. And one faltering stride at a time, she emerges reborn. Those around her begin to sense the change before she even speaks. Her energy, once drained and hesitant, now pulses with a steady confidence. I've noticed her posture shift, her gaze hold steady, her laughter ring freer. She no longer bends under the weight of criticism or cowers before emotional manipulation. She doesn't scramble to explain herself or to earn the approval of everyone she meets. Instead, being herself vulnerable, imperfect, radiant is more than enough. And in that authenticity lies her magnetic power. Of course, she still knows fear. I've seen it flare in her eyes when she contemplates standing alone. But now, she carries that fear in one hand and her dreams in the other, choosing to advance despite trembling knees. She acknowledges her shadows without allowing them to dictate her steps. Every morning, she makes the conscious decision to walk toward the light, believing that each choice, no matter how SML cements her path forward. Too often, women are taught that virtue equals submission, enduring injustice with a grateful heart, swallowing hurt in silence, counting blessings no matter how meager. But I feel a fierce indignation at that notion. Endurance without joy is a cage, not a testament to strength. The real virtue I admire isn't in stoic suffering, but in the refusal to accept that suffering as one's destiny. True virtue is courage draped in serenity, firmness bathed in kindness, compassion that never abandons itself. She learns slowly, sometimes painfully, that she can offer love without sacrificing her boundaries. She forgives, not to forget, but to free own spirit from the prison of resentment. She welcomes connections, yet she distances herself from anything that diminishes her light. In these choices, she demonstrates the deepest respect for her energy, understanding that where she invests her presence matters infinitely. When the world expects her to lash out, she remains still. When manipulation coils around her, she stands grounded. She doesn't engage in ego battles or dramatics. Instead, she steps back with the quiet assurance of someone who knows she needs never prove her worth. In that dignified silence, She dismantles structures of control that once seemed unbreakable. Her strength isn't in resisting, but in crystal clear clarity about what she wants, what she deserves, and what she will no longer endure. Once she reaches that plane of self-awareness, words lose their power to ensnare her. She recognizes attempts to belittle or use her, and she refuses to comply. She doesn't have to shout to be heard. Her unwavering presence does that for her. She inspires respect simply by living as her authentic self. And that, to my mind, is the essence of the virtuous woman, a soul forged by hardship, refined by introspection, and liberated by love for herself. Her light is so brilliant that those still lost in the shadows of manipulation cannot help but drift away. And in watching her shine, I'm reminded that the most courageous act any of us can perform is to choose ourselves every single day. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. The impact of a virtuous woman on other women. I've often felt a rush of hope when I witness a truly virtuous woman standing in her power, not just for herself, but for every sister who's still groping through emotional darkness. In my experience, her transformation shines so brightly that it becomes a lighthouse for those lost at sea. She isn't shouting commandments from a mountaintop, she's simply living her truth so boldly that others can't help but see the possibilities for their own lives. I find it deeply moving how, in her quiet confidence, she communicates more healing than any speech ever could. When she enters a room, it's as if the very air shifts, her posture unflinching in the face of provocations, her calm refusal dripping with dignity. I remember the first time I saw someone refuse an empty promise without a word. The look in her eyes said, "I value myself too much to settle." That moment made my heart swell because I realized true self-love isn't loud or demanding. It's a soft but unbreakable force that radiates outward, pulling in those who crave freedom from their chains. I've lost count of the women who've told me, "Seeing her leave gave me the courage to leave too." How often do we remain trapped simply because we've never witnessed another woman break free? Endurance becomes the default when our world offers no alternate script. But the virtuous woman flips the page. She says enough in a tone so gentle, yet so resolute, that it permits others to find their voice. In my opinion, this ripple effect of courage is the most profound healing any of us can offer one another. Her empathy is another marvel. She doesn't dole out cliches or quick fixes. Instead, she listens with the kind of attention that makes you feel seen for the first time. I've been in her presence when she held someone's trembling hand and simply said, "I understand," and I still get chills recalling the liberating power of that moment. She doesn't minimize your pain, she meets you in it, because she's walked that path herself. And by sharing her scars, her missteps, and her triumphs, she plants seeds of liberation in every heart, inclined to believe in the possibility of change. Ultimately, a virtuous woman is a living bridge between despair and freedom. She doesn't hover above others on some unattainable pedestal. She strides forward on solid ground, and those weary of crawling follow her lead. Watching her, I'm reminded that one woman's bravery can spark an entire generation's awakening. And that, to me, is the true essence of virtue, a relentless commitment to love oneself so deeply that love multiplies, lifting us all into the light. The silent confrontation that destroys the narcissist's ego. I've always been struck by how a narcissist's power relies entirely on the emotional turmoil he can ignite. He thrives on the sparks of anger, confusion, and desperation he sets aflame in others. In my experience, he watches with cruel delight as you scramble, shout, or beg, mistaking your pain for proof of his control. But the virtuous woman shatters this twisted feedback loop, not with noise, but with an almost sacred stillness. I find it profoundly moving that, in her quiet observation, she holds herself above the bait. Instead of lashing out, she chooses the path of discernment, turning away from his provocations with the gentle strength of one who knows her worth. She doesn't argue in circles or exhaust herself in pointless explanations. She doesn't raise her voice, she merely withdraws it. She doesn't prove her point, she preserves her inner calm. And that, to me, is her most devastating strike. When he realigns himself for conflict and finds only serene distance, it unnerves him more than any outburst could. He's so accustomed to boundary crossing that firm limits feel like an attack. But she doesn't negotiate. She simply refuses to compromise her values. She doesn't plead for respect. She honors herself by walking away the moment she senses dishonor. Watching her depart calmly even as he reels her back with guilting whispers, empty promises, and sly manipulations fills me with awe. I feel a surge of admiration for her clarity. She recognizes the trap before it closes and steps outside its reach, free and unbroken. Her exit isn't dramatic or vengeful. It's composed and resolute, leaving behind a silence so profound that the narcissist is left clutching at echoes. And what he loses in that silence is more devastating than any fight won, because it's the loss of relevance. A man who subsists on the worship of others finds indifference to be the ultimate annihilation of his ego. In my opinion, a virtuous woman's greatest act of power is her absence. She doesn't destroy with scathing words or vindictive schemes. She destroys with the simple truth of not returning to the place that wounded her. It's a lesson in self-respect that he can never reclaim, because once she learns her value, she never walks back into captivity. Her absence rings like a bell of liberation, reminding him and all who witness it that some losses are permanent, and some hearts, once freed, refuse to be shackled again. What to do to become a virtuous woman starting today? I know you might be asking yourself right now, could I ever become that woman? Perhaps you feel like you're miles away from her calm confidence and unwavering self-respect. But here's the truth I've come to believe with all my heart. The virtuous woman isn't some mythical ideal born fully formed. She's a daily masterpiece in progress. It all begins with one courageous choice: to refuse to live in a way that ignores your soul. Start by tuning into your inner world. Listen to those quiet signals. Perhaps it's a nagging discomfort you've been brushing off, a hollow ache you carry behind forced smiles, or the subtle sense that a piece of you has been erased. These are not inconveniences to dismiss. They're precious clues, guiding you back to your true self. In my experience, the moment you decide to honor these whispers is the very moment the virtuous woman starts to emerge. Next, feed your mind and spirit with knowledge. That ignites growth. Read books that challenge your old beliefs, listen to podcasts that inspire self-reflection, and watch videos that open new perspectives. I find Carl Jung's wisdom endlessly compelling. What doesn't reach consciousness controls us. The more you shine light on your shadows, the less power they hold over you. Remember, self-knowledge isn't a luxury, it's liberation. Don't overlook the power of faith, however you choose to practice it. Whether you pray, meditate, talk to God, or simply sit in silence while connecting with the universe, this spiritual anchor becomes your refuge when everything around you feels unstable. I've felt immeasurable strength in those quiet moments of communion, as if I'm being held by something far greater than my fears. One of the most radical acts of self-love you can perform is setting firm boundaries. You don't owe anyone an explanation for every no you voice. Protect your energy as fiercely as you'd guard a treasured gem. In my journey, I learned that those who genuinely care for me will respect those limits, and those who don't were often the very ones who thrived on my previous lack of boundaries. Saying no isn't selfish, it's essential for emotional survival. Caring for your body is another vital pillar. Nourish yourself with wholesome foods, honor your need for restful sleep, and move in ways that bring you joy, whether it's dancing in your living room, taking a brisk walk, or practicing gentle yoga. I've discovered that when my body feels nurtured, my spirit feels empowered, and I emit a vibration that naturally repels anything out of alignment with my growth. Surround yourself with women who reflect your highest aspirations. Healing is beautifully collective. Share your struggles, celebrate each other's breakthroughs, and trade hard-earned wisdom. There is something profoundly comforting in knowing you're not walking this path alone. Community fuels courage, and together you'll rise faster than you ever thought possible. Finally, be kind and patient with yourself. The virtuous woman you admire didn't appear overnight. She was forged through countless stumbles, brave decisions, and fresh starts. I urge you to honor each step of your journey, celebrate the small victories, forgive the setbacks, and remind yourself daily that you're progressing even when it feels slow. You're doing far better than you realize, and every single effort you make brings you closer to the radiant, self-loving woman you were always meant to be. The victory of a woman who doesn't need revenge, only peace. I've come to understand that a virtuous woman never chases revenge, because she's felt the weight of bitterness enough to know it only keeps her chained to the past. In my journey, I learned that vengeance is a cruel tether. No matter how sweet it seems in daydreams, it drags you back into the very pain you're trying to escape. What I crave now is freedom, the gentle stillness of my mornings, the untroubled calm in my heart as I drift into sleep, the quiet joy of waking with hope instead of dread. I've discovered that my real triumph doesn't lie in proving him wrong. It lies in no longer needing to prove anything to anyone. I don't wish him ill. I don't yearn to see him suffer. I simply refuse to carry his wounds any longer. So I release them one by one like dropping stones. I once used to weigh down my soul. I move forward without looking back, because I've realized that yesterday's heartbreak need not define tomorrow's promise. My greatest victory blossomed the day I saw my reflection and recognized a new woman staring back, one forged from heartbreak, yes, but reborn in the radiant armor of self-love rather than darkened by hatred. Now, I walk through my days with a lightness I never thought possible. I no longer shoulder guilt that isn't mine, or apologize for having needs that matter. I don't scramble to justify my choices because I know who I am, and that knowledge is complete. A virtuous woman doesn't demolish her past to avenge herself. She dismantles it to rebuild something stronger. In every healed scar, she breaks a chain, not only for herself, but for everyone who will follow in her footsteps. She becomes the final verse in an old song of pain, and the first chorus in a new anthem of freedom. Your choice? Continue or be reborn. I know these words might sting. Perhaps you felt a pang, remembering the nights you swallowed your truth, the mornings you begged for scraps of affection, when you deserved an abundance of respect. That aching recognition is part of your awakening. Now, you stand at a crossroads, and the path ahead narrows to one simple question. Will you keep living a life measured by others' opinions, or will you step into the world as the woman who sees her worth, even when the world looks the other way? You can choose to stay locked in the cycle that drains your spirit, continuing to fix someone who refuses to change, justifying hurtful behavior, shrinking yourself to fit a love that diminishes you. But ask yourself, how much longer will you endure being less than you were born to be? The virtuous woman you admire wasn't born flawless. One day she simply decided that fear was a worse sentence than the uncertainty of change. She chose to stop being a prisoner of expectations, not because pain vanished, but because pain no longer held enough power to keep her from moving forward. Today, make that choice for yourself. Decide to be reborn. Let go of patterns that dim your light. Stand firm in the knowledge that the bravest thing you can ever do is choose yourself again and again, until the echoes of your former self are nothing more than a distant whisper. The journey won't always be easy, but every step toward your freedom will remind you why you chose to rise. And in that rising, you become the living testament that a virtuous woman's greatest revenge is a life filled with peace, purpose, and boundless self-love. And there you have it, your guide to stepping out of the shadows, reclaiming your peace, and becoming the architect of your freedom. Remember, every step away from fear and every boundary you set is a testament to your courage and self-love. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to choose yourself again and again, until the woman in the mirror smiles back at the warrior she's become. Now, I want to hear from you. What's the single most powerful insight you've gained today, and how will you put it into action in your own life? Share your answer in the comments below. Your story might just be the spark someone else needs to ignite their transformation. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.